In late 2009, a multi-billion-dollar American corporation purchased massive amounts of national television airtime to commit public suicide. They bought prime commercial slots during major sporting events. They bought digital real estate across the internet. They commanded the attention of millions of American consumers. And then they broadcasted unedited, unfiltered footage of their own customers, calling their flagship product absolutely disgusting. They aired focus groups where people looked directly into the camera and said their food tasted like cardboard. They broadcasted reviews claiming their sauce tasted like cheap ketchup. They showed people throwing their product into the trash. Advertising executives across the globe watched in absolute horror. Public relations professionals were stunned. You do not spend millions of dollars to tell the world that your product is garbage. It violates every single known law of corporate marketing. It was a brutal, self-inflicted wound on a brand that was already bleeding to death. But it wasn't a mistake. It was a highly calculated execution. This campaign did not destroy them. It resurrected them. It triggered a financial renaissance so powerful that over the next decade, this company's stock market performance didn't just beat its competitors. It absolutely crushed Apple, Amazon, Google, and Netflix. The mechanism behind this impossible turnaround isn't just about changing a recipe. It is a psychological masterclass in radical vulnerability and an invisible technological pivot that completely rewired consumer behavior. We are going to reveal exactly what that framework is and how you can weaponize it in your own business a little later in this breakdown. First, we need to examine the cardboard. We need to look at the bloated, denial-ridden corporate machine that was desperately trying to sell a product nobody wanted to eat. So how did a company that was literally famous for serving terrible food use its own catastrophic reputation to engineer the greatest stock market rally in the history of the restaurant industry? That is the exact question we are answering today. To understand the sheer genius of this turnaround, you must first understand the foundation of the empire. Let's go back to 1960. A man named Tom Monahan purchased a small pizza store in Ypsilanti, Michigan, called Domino's. He eventually renamed it Domino's. But Monahan didn't care about culinary arts. He wasn't a chef. He was an operations fanatic. Monahan realized something profound about the American consumer. When people order pizza, they aren't looking for an authentic Italian dining experience. They are hungry, they are tired, and they want convenience. Domino's was never actually a pizza company. It was a logistics company that happened to transport heated dough. This logistical obsession led to two massive innovations. First, Monahan pioneered the modern corrugated cardboard pizza box. Before this, pizzas were delivered in flimsy paper boxes that would collapse and ruin the cheese. The new box retained heat, allowed for vertical stacking, and revolutionized the delivery radius. Second, he introduced the holy grail of fast food marketing: the 30-minute guarantee. 30 minutes or it's free. It was a legendary promise. It fundamentally altered the expectations of the American public. And it worked flawlessly. Domino's expanded at a terrifying rate. They built thousands of stores across the country, optimizing their kitchens for extreme assembly line speed. Every single operational decision was made in service of the stopwatch. But speed has a horrific cost. To ensure a pizza could be made, baked, and delivered in under half an hour, the ingredients had to be compromised. The dough was pre-mixed and perfectly standardized to bake in a high-speed conveyor oven. The cheese was pre-shredded and packed with anti-caking agents to prevent clumping. The sauce was a cheap, sugary paste designed for shelf stability, not flavor. They had engineered a perfectly efficient, highly profitable supply chain. But in the process, they had engineered a terrible pizza. For a long time, the consumer didn't care. The magic of the 30-minute guarantee overshadowed the mediocrity of the food. People were buying the speed, not the taste. Then the legal system intervened. In the late 1980s and early 90s, a series of catastrophic lawsuits struck the company. Delivery drivers, pressured by the strict 30-minute deadline, were getting into reckless accidents. Millions of dollars in damages were awarded to victims. In 1993, Domino's was forced to completely drop the 30-minute guarantee. This was the beginning of the quiet rot. The unique value proposition was gone. Without the promise of extreme speed, the customer was left holding a cardboard box containing a deeply flawed, unappetizing product. This was the slow descent into the dip of the corporate J-curve. For the next 15 years, Domino's entered a state of massive institutional denial. They continued to expand globally, coasting on brand recognition. They launched massive marketing campaigns featuring gimmicks, new side items, and flashy promotions. They did everything a massive corporation is supposed to do to drive revenue, except fix the actual product. Executives at headquarters looked at their balance sheets and convinced themselves they were winning. But the consumer had moved on. The market had matured. Better, faster, and higher quality delivery options were slowly bleeding Domino's to death. By 2008, the situation became critical. The Great Recession hit. Consumer spending plummeted. But the economic macro environment wasn't even their biggest problem. In April of 2009, a fatal blow struck the brand. Two Domino's employees in North Carolina decided to film a prank video. They recorded themselves doing incredibly unsanitary, grotesque things to the food as they were preparing it. They uploaded the video to YouTube. It went instantly, virally explosive. Within days, millions of people had watched the video. It dominated the national news cycle. It became the definitive cultural joke of the year. Domino's wasn't just known for bad food anymore. They were known for contaminated food. The stock price, which had already been battered by the recession, went into a catastrophic freefall. It crashed to under $3 a share. Domino's was functionally dead. They were the laughingstock of the corporate world. Franchisees were panicking, facing total ruin. The board of directors realized that traditional marketing could not save them. They couldn't run a shiny new commercial with a smiling family eating pizza. Nobody would believe it. The trust deficit was absolute. Enter a new leadership team, heavily influenced by an executive named Patrick Doyle. Doyle looked at the burning wreckage of the company and made a profound, terrifying observation. He realized that the company's biggest enemy wasn't Papa John's. It wasn't Pizza Hut. It was their own ego. Doyle understood that consumers have an incredibly high tolerance for mistakes, but a zero-tolerance policy for deception. If Domino's tried to ignore the noise and pretend their pizza was great, they would be bankrupt within a year. They needed an exorcism. Domino's hired an edgy, highly unconventional advertising agency called Crispin Porter plus Bogusky. CP+B was known for provocative, culture-jamming campaigns. They sat down with the Domino's executives and pitched a strategy that sounded like sheer lunacy. Do not apologize. Confess. CP+B proposed a campaign called the Pizza Turnaround. It required Domino's to publicly admit on national television that their product was a massive failure. It required them to broadcast the exact insults that consumers had been screaming at them for years. It was a terrifying proposition. The legal department hated it. The PR department hated it. The board of directors was deeply divided. If this failed, it would be recorded in business textbooks as the dumbest marketing decision in human history. It would destroy whatever microscopic sliver of brand equity they had left. But Doyle gave the green light. He decided to burn the ships. The campaign launched in late 2009. It was a 4-minute, documentary-style commercial. It opened with bleak, harsh lighting. It showed real consumer focus groups. People holding up slices of Domino's pizza and looking disgusted. The crust tastes like cardboard, one woman said. The sauce tastes like ketchup, a man added. Totally void of flavor, another read from a card. Then the camera cut to the corporate headquarters. It showed the actual head chefs at Domino's reading these brutal reviews. It showed them looking depressed, defeated, and genuinely hurt. Then came Patrick Doyle. The soon-to-be CEO looked directly into the camera. He didn't smile. He didn't make excuses. He said, "There comes a time when you know you've got to make a change." The documentary then shifted. It showed the chefs throwing out the old recipe book. It showed them flying across the country, sourcing real ingredients. It showed them completely reverse engineering the pizza from the ground up. They eliminated the terrible, flavorless crust. They replaced it with a hand-tossed dough, brushed with a garlic herb glaze. They destroyed the sugary ketchup paste. They formulated a robust, sweeter sauce infused with a heavy kick of red pepper. They threw out the processed cheese block. They replaced it with a richer blend of real mozzarella and provolone. They didn't just tweak the pizza. They murdered the old pizza and birthed a completely new product. When the new pizza rolled out, the campaign dared the American public to try it. They essentially said, "We know we suck. We listened to you. We fixed it. Give us one more chance." The public reaction was instantaneous, and it was unprecedented. Consumers were completely disarmed. In an era where every single corporation speaks in polished, focus-grouped PR jargon, a massive brand actively validating the customer's deepest complaints was intoxicating. People didn't just buy the pizza to taste the new recipe. They bought the pizza to reward the honesty. Sales exploded. In the first quarter of 2010, Domino's reported a staggering 14.3% increase in same-store sales. In the fast food industry, a 2% increase is considered a massive victory. 14% was a supernova. The "Our Pizza Sucks" campaign is now legendary. It saved the company from imminent bankruptcy. But if you stop analyzing the story here, you miss the true genius of the turnaround. The marketing campaign was merely a smoke screen. It was a brilliant, highly effective Trojan horse designed to buy the company time. It won back the public's trust. But a good marketing campaign does not sustain a 5,000% stock increase over a decade. This brings us to the core insight. The absolute secret behind the Domino's empire. This brings us to the aha moment. While the public was entirely focused on the new garlic herb crust and the bold new sauce, Domino's quietly executed the most aggressive digital transformation in the history of the restaurant industry. Patrick Doyle realized that Tom Monahan's original thesis from the 1960s was still correct. People still wanted ultimate convenience. But in the 21st century, convenience wasn't about the speed of the delivery car. It was about the friction of the transaction. Domino's decided to stop being a pizza company. They decided to become an e-commerce software platform that happens to sell pizza. While their competitors were still relying on phone calls and clunky, frustrating web portals, Domino's built a massive, world-class internal technology team. At their corporate headquarters, they eventually had more software engineers than actual food scientists. They realized that the biggest barrier to buying a pizza was the mental friction of placing the order. So they launched the Domino's Tracker. It was a piece of digital gamification that completely revolutionized consumer psychology. When you ordered a pizza, you could watch a progress bar that showed you exactly who was making your food. It told you when John was stretching the dough. It told you when the pizza went into the oven. It told you when it was out for delivery. It gave the consumer a powerful, addictive illusion of control. It turned waiting for a delivery from an anxiety-inducing black box into a highly transparent, entertaining digital experience. But they didn't stop there. They launched the AnyWare platform. They made it possible to order a pizza through literally any digital interface in existence. You could order by sending a simple pizza emoji on Twitter. You could order through a smart TV. You could order through your Ford car dashboard. You could order using an Amazon Echo or a Google Home. They built a system where a customer could save their favorite order as an easy order. Once saved, it took exactly 0 clicks to buy a pizza. You simply opened an app called 0 Click, waited 10 seconds, and the pizza was ordered and paid for. Absolute frictionless digital dominance. By aggressively pivoting into a tech-first infrastructure, Domino's dramatically lowered their customer acquisition cost. They locked millions of users into their proprietary digital ecosystem. They harvested massive amounts of user data, allowing them to optimize their supply chain and their marketing spend with terrifying precision. By 2019, over 65% of all Domino's sales were coming through digital channels. Their competitors were completely left in the dust, scrambling to hire third-party delivery apps like Uber Eats and DoorDash just to survive, bleeding 30% of their margins in the process. Domino's didn't need Uber Eats. They owned their own pipeline. The "Our Pizza Sucks" campaign was the emotional reset. It cleared the toxic debt of their past. But the seamless, addictive, highly integrated digital architecture was the engine that actually built the billions. However, pulling off a strategic pivot of this magnitude requires an almost impossible level of consumer insight. When Patrick Doyle and his team decided to completely scrap their flagship product, they didn't just guess what the new pizza should taste like. They didn't rely on the opinions of isolated executives in a boardroom. They analyzed thousands of data points, read tens of thousands of customer complaints, and systematically mapped the exact emotional and sensory failures of their brand. They listened to the noise. They found the signal. When you are trying to turn around a failing product, or when you are trying to scale a new SaaS offering, your greatest asset is the brutally honest feedback of your unhappy customers. But if you don't have a systematic way to capture, analyze, and act on that feedback, you are flying blind. You are relying on hope, not data. That is exactly why the most resilient companies in the world rely on Qualtrics. Qualtrics is the ultimate experience management platform. It does exactly what Domino's did during their turnaround, but it does it at scale, in real time, across your entire digital footprint. Instead of waiting for a massive PR crisis to understand that your customers are unhappy, Qualtrics acts as your organizational nervous system. It captures feedback from every touchpoint, from social media complaints to post-purchase surveys to website behavior, and uses powerful AI to synthesize that data into clear, actionable business intelligence. If you want to apply the Domino's framework of radical transparency and product iteration to your own business, you need to know exactly what your market hates about you. Qualtrics allows you to pinpoint the exact friction points in your customer journey, empowering you to fix the product before the brand equity is destroyed. It is the analytical engine you need to turn customer complaints into your greatest competitive advantage. You can start mastering your customer experience today by clicking the link in the description to explore Qualtrics. When you strip away the massive ad budgets, the gamified apps, and the garlic herb crust, the Domino's turnaround is a profound lesson in the economics of truth. For decades, the standard corporate playbook dictated that a brand must project a flawless facade. Hide the flaws. Bury the complaints. Market the illusion. Domino's proved that the flawless facade is dead. In the hyperconnected, digital age, the consumer already knows your flaws. They can see right through the corporate spin. By standing in front of the world and admitting their deepest failures, Domino's completely disarmed their critics. They weaponized their own vulnerability. They proved that radical honesty is not a PR liability. It is the ultimate form of market leverage. They admitted their pizza sucked. They fixed it. And then they built a technological empire that made it impossible to ignore them. If you learned something new, hit the like button and subscribe for more strategy breakdowns. And let us know in the comments, what company's strategy should we unlock next?